Hello. I figured I would take this time to update everybody on why I never update everybody on anything, because pretty much all the posts that I ever make about anything are on Twitter, and that's just tweets, and that's nothing special. I haven't released anything in a while. Um, Really just, I kind of want to ramble about things that have been on my mind, and maybe this could be an interesting, uh, possibly important presentation. I don't really know what I would call this, but I guess I'll start with just, if you are following me, you probably know that I'm a game developer. I design games that occasionally get finished and released online, and then whatever I post is usually something very small and very dumb, like a goofy fallopian tube Flappy Bird clone or something like that. And it's just, you could get all the enjoyment that you could possibly get out of it after a few minutes or at most an hour or something. That's pretty much all I've been posting for a while, and it's not really because those are the kinds of games that I want to be releasing to the world for the rest of my life or anything. It's more just because that's what I end up finishing, is the really small projects, and also because they're all side projects. None of those are my main thing. I have a lot of ambition with game design and game development that I can't show because it's just taking too long, and that stems mostly from whenever I played Cave Story, however many years ago it was, and this might seem off topic, but I'm going to talk about Cave Story for a little bit. Whenever I played Cave Story years ago, it was kind of the first game that convinced me that games are an art form, because it brought about the unique element that games have of interactivity, and it made me feel things that nothing else, no other media had ever made me feel. And also, I was blown away whenever I discovered that it was all made by one person. Over the course of 5 years, Cave Story was made by Daisuke Amaya, or however you pronounce his name, and that was really inspirational to me. To think that one person could make something of such quality and such scale by himself, just through time and dedication. And that made me want to make my own Cave Story, basically. So about 6 years ago, I started developing an inferior clone of Cave Story. It didn't have very many original ideas at all, and it was just kind of, the controls didn't feel right, and through the process of developing this game, I felt like I learned a lot about how I should design a game and what I was doing wrong and what I was doing right, and I kept trying to change it, and I kept adding new ideas to it and making it more original and making it more polished, and as time went on, the game changed dramatically, and after dedicating a whole lot of time to this one project that kept changing and kept restarting, I thought, I've taken this so far, why don't I just take it all the way and try to develop what could be my favorite game if I wasn't the one developing it, if I was just the one playing it. And because of that mentality, 6 years later I'm still working on the same game. It looks nothing like it did at first. It's basically a different game by now, but it's still, in my head, it's the same project. And I'm calling it Project Comet, because I don't have an official name for it, and I probably won't have one for several more years, because I'm pretty much still working on the first screen at the moment, but it's kind of problematic, really, to have a dream game, because everything else that I could be working on, any other game ideas that I could be exploring, I feel like are kind of a waste because they're taking away from this one thing that I really want to finish, and something that I know still won't be finished for a really long time because it's a huge undertaking. That's pretty much why most of the things that I release are either not of the highest quality or just really tiny and not ambitious at all, because if I spend longer than a few hours or maybe a week on something, it feels like a huge chunk of time taken away from something better and more valuable. To me, at least. That's part of the reason that I canceled the Riddle Transfer series. Because Riddle Transfer, if I had gone through and finished it, would have been a tremendous chunk of time taken away from this project that I consider far superior. Pretty much every day of the past 6 years have been me thinking about this game and what I'm going to do with it, and yet I've still got practically nothing. I still don't know what it's going to be. I know that I want it to be a story-based platformer, and I've finally designed the main character, But beyond that, I'm still not entirely sure what the story is going to be. I'm still not sure what the name is going to be. I'm still not sure what most of the mechanics are going to be, if there's going to be any central mechanic, or if it's just going to be all over the place. I don't know. I really don't. I started creating the actual assets for the game recently just because I was getting tired of the game not existing. Like, you know, they say that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Well, I finally stopped just thinking about that first step and I actually took it. But there's still 1,000 more miles to go. Which means I sure as heck don't have a release date planned, or a release year. I don't really know if people are going to like the game that I'm making. I imagine that there will be people who will, at least. But I'm making it more for myself than anyone else. I don't really have an audience in mind, besides just I'm trying to make a game that I would play. Also, I don't want to keep this project completely hidden. I would like to post little bits and pieces of it once it's further along, and actually I've posted a few work-in-progress images on Twitter already of just the main protagonist of the game. But I would like to maybe share screenshots and little animated GIFs, whatever, once it's actually more than just a single unfinished screen. So we'll see what happens. Oh, and I guess I'll say, ideally it would be a Steam game that you have to pay some money for. I don't know how much money, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Just know that whenever I'm not doing my college studies, I am hard at work on this game, or maybe I'm just sitting around playing video games is also a possibility. But thank you for your patience, I really appreciate your support, and I will see you later.
Any new games? If so, could you talk about what you're working on? I am working on one game, which doesn't have a final title, but I've been calling it Project Comet, and I've been working on it for I don't know how many years now. The sad thing is, still barely any of it is done, but that's because I haven't settled on a story and narrative for it yet. I'll talk about this more in the next question. Forgive me for asking, but what is this Project Comet you speak of? Project Comet is intended to be this story-centered, adventurous pixel platformer starring a 9-year-old girl who turns out to be very important to the fate of the world. Now, I know that's kind of cliched, but I like those kinds of stories, and I want this one to have a special meaning to it. I kind of want it to be laid out like Ocarina of Time in the sense that there's a big plot, but then also subplots that branch out and you can choose which one you want to follow first. Like you can choose between the Forest Temple and the Fire Temple first, or the Shadow Temple and the Spirit Temple first, and all of them will be connected somehow. I'd also like to have a different gameplay style for most or every section of the game, and I would like to design this game in such a way that it's fun even if you play it through 10 times. But this is of course a really ambitious project, and I don't anticipate finishing it anytime soon.
Do you think that Project Comet will have such unique mechanics that it'll be the next Five Nights at Freddy's or Undertale trend-wise? I don't think it'll stand out quite that much, but I do hope to combine elements of things that I've seen before in a way that's unique.
How is the progress on the cave story type game? Are you still making it? A long time ago, I was starting this cave story-ish game with, I think, a pig wearing pants as the main character, and it was really similar to cave story. It was kind of almost a swap of characters. But that and other games that have scrapped over time, but I still wanted to keep their ideas, have kind of morphed into being Project Comet. As indicated by the next question, so you've previously stated that Project Comet started out as a cave story clone. Unless I'm wrong, then this question will be pointless. But I'm curious, how much progress did you make on recreating Cave Story before you jump shifted to Project Comet, or did the change happen before any actual creation was initiated? I had a really basic engine done in Flash where the character could run left and right and jump, and that was about it, and then I had a few small areas just put together. But then I realized I didn't want to finish this game in its current state, so I decided to take my best ideas from it and try to adapt them into something better. Will you make a more darker game? I sure hope so. When can we expect your next game? I honestly have no idea. Project Comet is the only game that I'm actively working on, and I expect it to be years and years from now until I actually finish it. I don't even have an estimate. But I suspect that there will be times when I want to take a break from it and just make something on the side for people to enjoy. What game genres will you be focusing mainly on with your future games? I want to experiment. I mean, Project Comet, I think, by itself will have several different genres in it. I'll continue that with these questions. Will you make more games after Project Comet, and what would they be about? Will you make more horror games? Will you make more point-and-click games? I have an idea for another large-scale project that I would like to work on after Project Comet, if it still is even reasonable at that point, and it would be an RPG about witches. I think it's possible that that could have horror elements, I'm not really sure yet. I've stopped focusing on point-and-click games, but I think that my future games will still have adventure game elements to them. What inspired you to make Project Comet, and what was the inspiration for Patina, the main character? As said earlier, Project Comet is kind of a mishmash of games that I didn't want to finish, but I liked certain elements of them and I really wanted to use them somewhere. In my cave story type game, there was a certain area that I really liked the idea of, and this other game that I started about fish, which was kind of inspired by Super Paper Mario, there were certain mechanics that I really wanted to use. Those games and others that I've cast to the wayside felt like they didn't really have much variety in the way that they were planned, and they would have just had a lot of fluff, but Project Comet is planned to have much less of that fluff if possible. There were a few ideas that I'm not sure if I'll still use, but they were inspired by mental images that I got from listening to a song by Tin Hat called The Comet, hence the temporary name Project Comet. The protagonist, Patina, or Patina, I just say Patina, but both are correct. I don't want to say too much about her character. I believe that she is an optimist and a pacifist. And she's a pacifist because I didn't want to make a game that encourages unnecessary violence from the player, like most platformers and most games in general. And if you think that idea came from Undertale, I've been wanting to do this idea since before Undertale, because I remember once that the creator of Fez, Phil Fish, said on Twitter that there were too many games that revolved around violence, and his approach to that was making Fez, which is a really carefree game that has no violence whatsoever. But I want to make a game in a genre that usually has a lot of senseless stomping on enemies, and have the main character decidedly be a pacifist even in the face of there being enemies and other conflicts. Also, Patina's design took years, and it's a combination of a lot of aesthetic things that I like in characters, and I eventually settled on her paintbrush hair after misinterpreting an icon that Cyanatar used to have on Twitter, which had her character Pim, which also makes sense because Patina is an artist. If you could design your dream game, no limitations, what would it be? How would it be different from other games? That's pretty much what Project Comet is. I thought a long time ago that I was just wasting my time making other games when I could be focusing on trying to make my dream game. For that reason, I don't know if I would recommend having a dream game in your head, because it feels like anything that you do is not good enough and you're always wasting your time. But whenever the vague picture of this game started developing in my mind, my goal became I want to make a game that I could call my favorite if I wasn't the one who made it. I'm not really focusing on making it super unique, but I want it to be more than people expect. Will Project Comet have any kind of voice acting? I don't think so, except for maybe like character grunts. What's a game mechanic that you really want to integrate into a future game you make? I guess I can mention this one. In Super Mario Galaxy, there are these bubble cannons that look a lot like Flood from Super Mario Sunshine, and they shoot bubbles, and then whenever Mario is in front of a bubble, he just launches into space inside the bubble. I think it would be fun to take that concept and incorporate it into something with more thought-provoking level design. Okay, serious question. Do you have a broad artistic message in mind for Project Comet yet? And if so, could you share it? If it's too early, I understand. It is too early, I'm sorry. I'll just say yes, but at this point the message is still kind of ambiguous to me. Have you been having help on this new game you're working on, or have you done it all single-handedly? The art looks incredible and the game design looks truly professional. I can't wait to see the final product. Well, thank you. It is all done by me. I occasionally get input from friends, but that's about it. How's Project Comet going? Is Patina okay? Don't ask why I ask if a fictional character is feeling okay. She's fine, for now. In terms of progress, I only have about 3 rooms of Project Comet mostly finished, and I'm probably going to scrap them because of story changes. It's taken me way too long to discover this, but I think that the next thing I really need to do with Project Comet is nothing to do with the development of it, but just to plan out a narrative from beginning to end and maybe make a few drafts out of that so that I have a point of reference for everything that will happen in the game, what characters there will be, how it will build over time. It's not another game that I can make up as I go along. When do you think Project Comet will be finished or released, and how much do you think Project Comet will cost? The thing is, like, Owlboy is a game that has been in development for 8, 9, 10 years, I'm not really sure how long, and that game has been developed by a small team of people who all seem to really know what they're doing, and that game is finally going to be released on November 1st. I'm just one guy, and I don't even have a reliable blueprint for my game aside from certain things that I really want to put in it. So the only answer I can give is years from now. As far as what it'll cost, this could change depending on what happens with the game. I'm thinking at least $10. It could very well be more, and I'm guessing that it will be more, but I'm not really positive. I know that it won't be free. That's the only thing I'm really sure of. What platforms will Project Comet be available on? At least PC, and we will see what else. Are you making your new game pixelated because of Cave Story instead of Flash? Not exactly. For a while I did actually try to use Flash graphics for it, and it was just taking way too long and it didn't look how I really wanted it to, and so I eventually transitioned into pixels because, first of all, it's easier, secondly, I like the aesthetic of Super Nintendo games a whole lot, and thirdly, to me, pixel graphics like that feel more conducive to the solid feel of a platformer. I'm glad that I made the switch because it's faster and I think it opens up more possibilities. Has school ever made you feel like you need to take a break from Project Comet? P.S. Congrats for 20K. Best wishes for Project Comet. Thank you very much. Actually, the opposite has happened. Because I've had to be so dedicated towards my schoolwork, I'm always eager to get back to my fun stuff. What programs are you using to make Project Comet along with its pixel art? The main programs that I'm using are GameMaker Studio, the Pro Edition, Graphics Scale for pixel art, Free Edition, and FL Studio and Audacity for music and sound effects. Will you put up a preview of how Project Comet will play like, more than at the end of your Riddle School Transfer 2 commentary? If so, do you know when? And can we see some sprites for Project Comet? No context needed. I periodically post little preview stuff on Twitter. Will you be spicing Project Comet up with tweening at a later stage of development? That's hella important. If you mean adding more in-between frames to the animations than there already are, then I seriously doubt it. I like them the way they are, and even though the game runs at 60 frames per second, I would like for all the frames of sprite animation to be visible at 30. What is the length of Project Comet estimated to be? I'm afraid of answering this question because anything could change. In my mind, it's at least 10 hours long, but I don't have 10 hours worth of material in my head. So it could be longer, but it could also be much shorter depending on what I think is important or not important to include. Who are the characters that you're going to make in Project Comet? Besides Patina, I'm going to keep that a surprise, partly because a lot of it is a surprise to me still. Does Project Comet have anything to do with comets? Oddly enough, at least in this stage of development, it has nothing to do with comets. And will Project Comet break the fourth wall and have puns? Oh, for sure. What's your favorite thing about making games, and what are you most excited to show people about Project Comet? I love seeing something big and meaningful, or at least a lot of fun, come from basically nothing. There's just something magical about seeing things come to life. And I'd rather not share what I'm most excited about showing people, because I want to keep that a surprise. What are some of the different concepts that you've had for Project Comet that have just fallen through for whatever reason? There was this long phase where I thought about having Project Comet be both a side-scroller and an RPG, just inserting battles and stats to make the game supposedly more replayable, but I figured this would feel inconsistent and wreck the gameplay flow and the themes that I have in mind, so I decided not to do that.
Sometimes I'm tempted to vomit. Wasted time is a source of my drama, school is a job, and if I'm being honest, I just want to work on Project Comet.
For my dream project, which you could call Project Comet, you could call it Project Paintbrush, or Patina's Paintbrush, I don't know what to call it in public. I have a name for it that's official, but I'm not going to reveal it anytime soon. Just, I haven't felt the magic, and I think the magic that I'm trying to look for stems back to way before I even started making games, and maybe that's where I can look to find it, because I'd like to reiterate that if I don't upload for a long time, it doesn't mean the channel is dead, it just means I don't like to force out videos, because I don't have a lot of things to say all the time. But on that subject, I've been wanting to make this particular video for about a week now and just haven't been able to because of family visiting. And the topic that I would like to discuss is my game that has been in the works for forever, which would be Project Comet, which it's gone under a number of names, but that's the name that people seem to stick to the most, so that's what I'll call it for now. And if you don't know at this point, Project Comet is a game that I've been trying to figure out for about a decade now. I'm not sure exactly how long it's been because the beginning of development it was kind of fuzzy. What I would consider the conception of the project would be whenever it was an entirely different game, but that was kind of the beginning of the thought process for it. It used to be more like Cave Story, and now in my head it's more like Paper Mario, but it's still not an RPG, so I don't exactly know how I want to categorize it. But that's one of the problems with it, is that I haven't been able to figure out exactly what the identity of the game is, and that's part of why it's taken so long. But it's weird because I used to be proud of the idea that this game has taken forever. I used to be proud of the fact that I'd been working on it for years, and even though nothing had really been done with it yet, I was happy to think that whenever it was all done, I would be able to say, hey, this game was 10 years in the making, or 15 years in the making, and this is the result. But now I don't feel so proud of that anymore. I actually feel pretty ashamed. Because whenever you look at a game like Owlboy, that's a game that was in development for 9 years. And after those 9 years, it was done. It is a game that you can play for 10 hours to reach the end of the story, to have the complete experience. It's a result. And one of the reviews that I saw for Owlboy not long after it came out, someone said that it had been in the works for 9 or 10 years, and it shows that it wasn't in development hell. You can see all of the work that went into it over those 9 years. It doesn't seem like they just skimped out for months and months or something. I admire that, because my game has been in the works for possibly even longer than Owlboy, and I have nothing to show for it, besides
some really short test video clips, and that's pretty much it. I have a whole lot of ideas in my head. It's not that I have a shortage of ideas, and it's not even that I feel like I'm incapable of making the game work from a technical standpoint, because I feel like I can do all the artwork, I can do all the programming, I can do all the music even. I feel like I can make everything the way that I want it to be by myself from a technical standpoint, but not as much from a mental standpoint, because I always feel like I'm not doing enough with it. Every time that I return to this project, I feel like it has to be something bigger or something smaller or something a little different from what it is, and the identity is what's caused it to be so difficult, among other things. I've been asking myself a lot lately why this game is not done if it's been worked on for this long, and for that matter, why is it still barely even started? There's not a minute of gameplay. Not one. And there should be. There should be at least one. There should be an hour or two by now, at least. There should be something. Something to show for it. And I just realized that what have I been doing over the past 10 years or so? I've been thinking, well, maybe the game should be done in Flash. Maybe I should veer away from Flash. Maybe that's not the best idea. Should it be a cave story game? Should it be more like Zelda? Should it be a 2D platformer at all? Should it have some RPG elements to it? Should it be more like Conker's Bad Fur Day with certain kinds of puzzly elements to that? Should the story have more fantasy elements or more realistic elements? How should I combine them if I want both? Do I want this to be more of a gameplay-focused game, or do I want it to be more of a story-focused game? And if I want both, how can I combine them in such a way that it's graceful and it doesn't feel like one is impeding on the other? Do I want the game to have a social, political message to it? Do I want it to be more complicated or less complicated? Do I want to focus on the replay value more than other aspects of the game? Do I want it to be a collect-a-thon because I tend to revisit that genre more than others, but then if I have collect-a-thon elements to the game, then will it seem like I'm just putting the story on hold whenever you have to collect stuff? Do I want the game to be longer or shorter? Should I have the art style have a little bit of depth to it, or should I make it all flatter? Should it be colorful? Should it be less colorful? Should I have multiple playable characters, or should there just be one character? And if there's more than one, then how should I switch between them? Should I have Zelda-esque items that you can use in addition to the paintbrush weapon, or would that just make gameplay inefficient? And if I did, then would I have enough buttons to make it work without having there be too many buttons? What would those items even be, and how could I be sure that they're useful everywhere and not just in very specific locations? What I've gathered is that you can't think like this and expect anything to happen. It's not wrong to be ambitious. It's not wrong to be a perfectionist. But there's a point when you have to stop. You have to decide. And I don't know if I'm there yet. I remember Lee Unkrich saying, in regards to the making of Toy Story 3, that they could have just kept making the movie better and better and better, but there had to be a point when they said it just needs to be finished. Much more recently, someone by the name of KD online, who has a webcomic called Oddity Woods, which I'm a fan of, she said in response to a Curious Cat question, which I can't remember anymore if I was the one who asked the question or not, but it was about motivation and getting yourself to work on something. And her advice was, you might have a vision in your head, but what you put on paper or what you put on a screen is never going to be the perfect vision that it is in your head. If anything, it is going to be inspired by what is in your head. You can't expect to replicate it perfectly. Earlier this year, I was feeling really lost about what the purpose of my game even was anymore. I didn't know exactly why I was working on it, and it's not that I even wanted to stop, because I very much wanted to keep going, and I still do, but I didn't know where to continue. I couldn't find any of my inspiration. And Aatrox Shibatsu of Smoking Pencil, he gave me a lot of really good tips about finding my center, finding my artistic core, what really drives me to make anything, not just this, but anything that I've ever made. How can I think about what inspired me to make games in the first place? What is the drive for my continuing to do it? What did I used to have that I don't have now? And that helped a whole lot. Whenever I finally felt like I found my center, my core, I felt inspiration that I hadn't felt in a very, very long time. However, it still wasn't everything. I recognize that it's one thing to be really inspired, it's another thing entirely to have results. Something that has dawned on me lately, that I feel like is a very important discovery, is that I am very easily overwhelmed whenever I have too much on my mind at once. If I know that there are a whole bunch of school assignments coming up, even if some of them are just way far off and I don't have to think about them for a long time, and even if some of them are really small and would take no time to finish, it's just the fact that there's a number attached to them, and that number is kind of big, that it kind of makes me freak out and I don't want to do anything. Which is also why I'm recording this right now. I don't want to think about the 60-something sketches that I have to draw before my class in 12 hours. I don't want to think about that. I really don't. And, you know, oftentimes, if I feel like I have too much on my plate, I will just take a big break, doing nothing but sitting around playing video games until my mind is not attached to any of it. And then, once I feel like I'm kind of in Zen mode, I will start on one thing, focus on that one thing, and whenever it's done, I can move on to the next thing, and that's kind of how I cope with life. That's kind of my justification for procrastinating, I suppose. Seems like whenever I have a relatively small idea for a video or a game or something to that effect, I don't really have many problems starting it and then getting it done without really taking many breaks. And those breaks are not very long. And maybe it's not even so much because they're projects that are very closely inspired by other things. Maybe it has more to do with the fact that they're not really that big and therefore are not overwhelming to me. Maybe it just feels like they're so much more manageable because I can see the light at the end of the tunnel before I enter the tunnel. So what is my current mentality? I would like for my game to be at least 8 hours of gameplay from start to finish, hopefully more, but I'm going to pretend that it's not. I'm going to pretend it's an hour long. I'm going to try to mentally break it into manageable chunks, pretending that the rest does not exist. If you're new to game design and you're looking for advice, a lot of game developers who are really experienced will tell you to start small and work your way onto bigger things. But now I'm thinking, even if you are experienced, you should start small. Ambition is a great thing, but if you think too big, then the small stuff becomes invisible. So if nothing's getting done, downsize. That is something that the professionals do that as a perfectionist I have always rejected. I've always thought, why should I wait until the very end of development to polish my game? If it's going to be polished in the end anyway, why can't I just do all that stuff along the way? The answer is results. My favorite games to play are the ones where it feels like I'm always making progress. Why don't I make a game like that? After making no progress. I say, don't be like me. Stand up for free enterprise. Fight the man. Buy your luxury timepiece, Pooch. In the previous video, I mentioned that Aatrox Jobatsu helped me with my quest to find my center. What is my core? What inspires me and motivates me to create anything that I want to create? I've still been feeling some uncertainty and some insecurity about my work, and by my work, mostly I just mean my game that I've been working on for ages because I want to do it right, and I want to have fun with it, and it's hard to exactly determine how the best way to make it is. And I've also been thinking about the design of various Zelda dungeons, because that's just something that I've had to think about for my game. And I found a link between these two things. Get it? I'm sorry. Later I made this video called Results, in which I discussed at length the various struggles that I've had with making this game of mine that I've been working on for years and it still has made less progress than I care to admit. Almost all of my plans for Project Comet that I've come up with over the years, I am now scrapping. I kinda said this back in the My Center video, but it's to an even greater extent now. And in the darkness of the night, whenever I have my Notepad app open on my glowing phone screen, trying to come up with plans for my game, I always default to typing things that other games have done. How can I make it more like Donkey Kong? How can I make it more like Zelda? I always think if I can take something that's already been done and transform it, then it can become my own. But deep down, I know that I'm consciously copying something, and that doesn't feel good. Yes, maybe nothing is truly original out there, but I like to at least have the illusion. I tried to finish making at least one area of Project Comet all year. And guess what? That didn't happen. With Project Comet, I'm trying to make something brand new. The approach isn't going to be the same. I have to determine what the baseline is for myself. And chances are that means I have to stop worrying so much about it being playable as fast as possible and just sit down and form a plan. I think I want to put Project Comet back where it came from before I announced its existence. Back into total privacy. No news about it, no videos of me talking about it, no answering questions about it. I'm just gonna pour my heart into it and see what happens. Pretty good about myself. And then there was the matter of, this game has a cute little girl protagonist, which, incidentally, I was at the time and still am, working on a platformer with a cute little girl protagonist, so that felt very much in line with the kind of thing that I would like to see in a game, just seeing more stories about a little kid character in a big world, because that's kind of my interests. When I saw Hat Kid for the first time, in that obscure little news article, and I saw what kind of game that she was going to be in, I kind of saw her as my own child in a way, which obviously she's not my child, she's yours. And it felt very disheartening to see her raised a different way than I would raise her, I guess. But I think you raised her well, and you probably raised her better than I would have. Because I've been working on my own game for many years, and there's a very, very big difference between the game that you made and the game that I've been working on for however long. And that difference is, your game is done. It's finished. It's out there for the world to see. It's making people happy. And you made that happen. It's remarkable that such a small team, for their own ambitious first project, was able to make something this elaborate and have it get done. And I'm just sorry that I took it for granted. There's a lot of passion here that I didn't see before, and I appreciate it. Thank you for this. From my perspective, this game is more like a side project to tie up a loose end, and it's not one of the main things I'm working on.